Welcome everyone, HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's my pregame, analysis or preview of number 14 Arkansas versus Gardner-Webb, unranked from the Big South Conference. This is game two. Arkansas is 1-0, only 30 more to go. One of those plays out tonight at Bud Walton Arena in Fayetteville. Tip is being right around 7 o'clock Central Time. And this is a game that if you want to watch it, you can do that on SEC Network Plus. So it's a live stream. In fact, this is the second of 4 home games Arkansas has to open the regular season. And all 4 of these games start at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And each of the games is going to be live streamed on SEC Network Plus. And it's back-to-back weeks. This is week 1, back-to-back weeks of Monday, Friday games. Arkansas started this season off with a 93-59 win over Alcorn State on Monday. This is the Friday night game. Next week on Monday, so a quick turnaround from tonight, Arkansas hosts Old Dominion. And then on the Friday of next week, it will be North Carolina Greensboro. So this is how Arkansas is opening its regular season before going off to the Bahamas for the battle for Atlantis. I'm hoping L has a better game tonight. Already getting a comment. I think most Razorback fans would agree with that. This is a guy that was absolutely scintillating, if you can use that descriptor, for a red-white performance, and then what he did against Division II Texas Tyler. I thought he was outstanding. The NBA scouts I talked to that went to Arkansas's Pro Day raved about Trevor Brazile. We know that. But one of the players that stood out during that to some of these scouts was L. Ellis. One scout said this might end up being Arkansas's best guard this year. Now, keep in mind, Caleb Battle did not go through Pro Day. In fact, he returned to practice a few days later and did play in both of Arkansas's exhibition games. And we've seen what he's done in those. He was Arkansas's leading scorer, and then he was the leading scorer in the season opener, 21 points, very efficient. We're going to go through all of that. But Arkansas has started out on the right foot. Eric Musselman talked about it in his postgame the other night, that you look around college basketball, there are going to be some upsets. Well, the 4th-ranked team in the country, Michigan State, lost at home on opening night to James Madison. The Spartans have bounced back and won game 2 this week, but that's one ranked team already that's been knocked off during the first week of college basketball, let alone some of the other upsets that teams that weren't ranked but maybe considered favorites around basketball. This is college basketball landscape. It's been this way for decades. It seems to get tougher and tougher. And there are no rent wins anymore. You have to take every opponent seriously. Arkansas wins by 34. Not a very competitive game. Arkansas had its way from the onset. There were some things I think most would like to see cleaned up. But a guy who likes to go 7 or 8 rotation, that was the one of several games maybe here in November before they trip off to the Bahamas, where he'll be able to experiment with different personnel packages, different lineups, get guys in there that may not factor into the rotation, at least initially or at all. Get guys not only playing time, but see what works, what doesn't work. See what options he has to tweak that rotation later on if he sees a need. Because we know Arkansas's had needs in the last several years. As good as they've been in postseason, start talking early January, late December, early January, there's been some significant speed bumps and some losses, especially slow starts in league play. And Musselman's not been afraid to change up part of that rotation. Certainly the back end of 7 or 8, and sometimes you can change those things. We've talked so much about the versatility. I keep using phrases like, positional, diversity within skills at each position because of that quality depth at each position. So he's got a lot more to work with and a lot more to figure out and a lot more weapons at his disposal, because I think there's always been talent, but guys you could plug in and trust to be next man up. I mean, one of the NBA scouts that was at Pro Day told me after walking out of there, he said, and he's been to all of Arkansas's Pro Days since Musselman's been here, he said, this is his best team. And he goes, this is a situation where if something's not working, whether it's an injury or an attitude or foul trouble or whatever, it's next man up, and he doesn't have to have any reservations, Eric Musselman, and go on that route, that next man up philosophy. So that's very important for a program that's had back-to-back Sweet 16s, a couple of Elite Eights to start that run. This could be a needle mover in terms of getting to that final weekend. Way ahead of ourselves. We keep saying it's a talking point, but I think there's some truth there. Certainly knocking off Purdue in the exhibition season, even though it didn't count, does give you a little bit of an idea of the team with 5 returnees and 8 newcomers factoring into the 13 rotation, the 13 on the roster. You certainly start to get some ideas about some of the guys that are it's hard to ignore that they're going to be in the rotation, even though all 13 scholarship players in game one played in the first half and in the second half. I think Musselman would like to continue that trend for a little bit because we know that's not going to stick. But you look around. I mentioned there's already one upset. There's several intriguing games going on tonight. You look around the SEC. Georgia's already off to playing a tough schedule. Loses in Las Vegas against Oregon. I think Georgia tonight's playing Wake Forest. I think it's Wake Forest. Georgia's got another solid opponent. Baylor defeated Auburn, 20th ranked Baylor, in a midweek game this week in a neutral site. Very exciting college basketball game. I got to watch that. You see that Auburn's brought back a lot of players. I understand why the SEC is really respected. 5 teams in the preseason AP poll, top 25. That was more than any other conference. I think there's 8 or 9 teams, when I look at the rosters and what they bring back and what I know about these teams, that potentially have NCAA tournament value later on. Obviously, injuries, Arkansas understands that better than anybody. Other things can factor in there. But this is probably the deepest the league has been. And when I look at that 8 or 9 teams, I mean, that's more than half the 14 members in the league that might have NCAA tournament resumes when it's all said and done. It may not work out that way, but looking at it from here, it's possible. That's not wishful thinking, and so we'll see. But I think tonight we're going to talk about this matchup with Gardner-Webb and what Arkansas might be able to accomplish. We've heard so much about they want to run more. They want more pace, more tempo. They want to be able to stretch the floor with three-point shooting. Well, we saw that in the game one. We saw it through the preseason. But when it actually counted, yes, inferior opponent, even though all respect to Alcorn State for being back-to-back SWAC champs, Arkansas had its way from start to finish. You understood that everybody that played, the Arkansas second unit or 6 through 13 probably could have won that game. And convincingly, had it been just going with that. So this is one of those things where you still learn some stuff. You may not have revealed all of your ideas about rotation, but several things that we didn't know actually did play out. Jalen Graham, we didn't know what to expect. We knew that he missed the entire exhibition season, both games. He did play in the red-white game, and he missed pro day with back spasms. He didn't play in either of the exhibition games. He made his return, his debut, if you will. It was everybody's regular season debut. But when you consider only practicing against teammates, he'd not played against anybody else, so it was really his debut. And he's a guy that had 8 points and 8 rebounds. I thought did an outstanding job. Chandler Lawson's been so good for Arkansas. He's been in that starting lineup, was there again for the regular season opener. He didn't play a lot, about eight minutes or so. Mekhi Mitchell, last season's regular starter, played 4 minutes. Love the Battle versus L competition. Will make them both better. Battle looks more able. So here's the thing. Battle's a scorer, man. He's a 3-level guy. He can get it any way you want it. And there's been a few guys at Arkansas that are like that. Dusty Hannes, going back the last few years, Daryl Macon, Jalen Barford, Mason Jones. They can get it any way you want it. And JD Notae to some degree. And so I think Caleb Battle is one of those guys. 6'4", 6'5", strong, has that East Coast swagger, man. I'm that guy mentality, and he goes out there and he puts a stamp on it. He's a tough defender too, but I mean he's an efficient 3-point shooter. We saw that at Temple. We've seen it so far this year. He gets to the free throw line. He's money there. I think his percentage last year at Temple was 89%. Guess what? He made 8 of 9 free throws in game one. That's at 89%. So this is a guy you're going to be able to count on when you need to step to the line, get there in volume, and knock them down. Arkansas was not a good free throw shooting team last year, and that's something that's been a staple under Musselman until last year. And you got guys like Battle who stretch the floor. I mean, he was 5 of 9 from the field against Alcorn State, 3 of 6 from 3. That's 50%, and then 8 of 9 at the foul line. So 21 big points. He was my player of the game. By the way, guys, my sponsor, Jose's Bar and Grill here in Taneytown. I'm back. We're doing pre-games here every game this year where we can on Monday's game. Jose's is closed on Monday, so we'll be doing those somewhere else. But here we are on Friday afternoon. Beautiful weekend all over the state. It was a great drive up today from Little Rock, Northwest Arkansas. You've got the Hogs football team back in town. Seems like they played most of the season on the road, but back in town for some homestands, and certainly getting Auburn's a chance to get 2 in a row. And they're still playing for a bowl, believe it or not. So this could be a big weekend. The Arkansas's women's team won its second game 2-0 now. Earlier today, over 11,000 fans. Most of those elementary school kids who I'm sure made that place wild. So Arkansas is looking to go 2-0 in Bud Walton Arena today. combining women's and men's games. But just getting into some of the matchups with Gardner-Webb, this is a team under Tim Kraft. He's 11th year head coach. They made the NCAA tournament once, the program's first ever under Kraft back in 18-19. It's a team last year that went 10-8 in the Big South, finished fourth or tied for fourth. And I think the team had a losing record overall. Sometimes that happens when you're in those conferences where you play a lot of tough payday games and your record's not overall is not great, but they were competitive in their league. Gardner-Webb is a team that's a little similar to Alcorn State when you look at them statistically from a year ago. Tries to keep teams in the mid 60s. Last year was top 50 in Division I and doing just that, holding opponents to 65.5 points per game. It's a team that ranked 30th in offensive rebounds, 8.1 per game. We knew Alcorn State was a good offensive rebounding team a year ago. Overall, not so good. This team's a better overall rebounding team, also top 50 when you factor in that top 30 in offensive rebounds. So when you start looking at holding teams to their game total and scoring, ranked really high last year, top 50. And then the offensive rebounding, it's a team that also turns teams over, gets a lot of steals, similar to Alcorn State, ranked in top 100 in steals at over 7 per game, turning teams over 14 per game. Now, that was last year. This is obviously a different team. But when you go back to this team defensively last year, here's the other thing that really stood out to me. It held teams to only 21 makes per game from two. So did a great job defending inside the arc. That ranked top 20, like 16th in Division I. And then when you looked at the field goal percentage, that also was outstanding. Top 35, I think, 32nd they finished, holding teams to 46% from the 2-point range. It was not a very good 3-point shooting team a year ago, similar to Arkansas, but already in game one, Gardner-Webb's 1-0. They blew out a Division II school, the Erskine Flying Fleet, by 40, 98-58. Believe it or not, those guys, Gardner-Webb actually made more threes, took more threes. Arkansas was slightly more efficient. Arkansas at 12 for 30 was right at 40%. And I think Gardner-Webb was like 14 of 34, 32, something like that, but right at 39%. So both teams getting up a lot of threes. Arkansas did a great job against Alcorn State. Eric Mosman said he was worried about the 3-point shooting with the guards, with the Braves guards on Monday. That was never a problem. Arkansas held that team to 3 of 9 from 3, 33%, but that low volume, and that's something that's been a trademark of Arkansas's top 10 to 20 ranked defenses the last 3 years, is squeeze them down on opponents' 3 attempts and keeping their percentages lower than what they like or what they do on the season otherwise. So Arkansas does a good job of trying to take away the 3 line. They did that against Alcorn State. Let's see if Arkansas does a better job than the Erskine Flying Fleet did of defending the 3 line tonight. I suspect they will. And let's see if Arkansas is able to maintain solid 3-point shooting. The Razorbacks started slow. 1 of 6, Tremont Mark hit one of those first 6 3-point attempts. And then boom, Caleb Battle comes off the bench. He gets hot. Mark hits some more. They sandwich a couple of each of them hit their second triples, sandwiched around Trevor in Brazil, knocking down his big 3 in the first half. And now Arkansas all of a sudden finishes the game 11 of 24, almost, close to, between 45 and 50% in that part of it to get to 40 for the game. And so this is a team all of a sudden, we're not used to talking about it or saying it, all of a sudden Arkansas is a dangerous 3-point shooting team. That's got to continue to be a consistent theme for it to be true. But right now, in a small sample size, it certainly has been true. I mean, I've seen this team in open practice, red-white game in person, open practice in person, 2 exhibition games in person. I watched the live stream against Alcorn State because I couldn't get up here on Monday for the season opener, the regular season opener. But I've seen this team in every possible way at this point, and they've not had problems getting up threes or making them. And so, efficiency can wane. It can go up and down. But I think there's 5 guys who can. I mean, you can have multiple games and a lot of games this year where there's 4, 5, 6 guys hitting more than 1 3, and there's at least 8 guys capable of competently knocking some down or at least 1 down in a game. And so, you might have a bad start or a bad stretch within the game, but I think this team is going to get some volume up there, and certainly pay attention to that matchup tonight with Alcorn State. Let's see what Arkansas is able to do against Gardner-Webb. Let's see what Arkansas is able to do against a Gardner-Webb team that can defend, or has historically last year anyway, defended well inside the 2-point line. I think Arkansas, the way it's built, you got a lot of the guys that can knock down threes are really crafty, getting into their dribble drive game, whether it's getting all the way to the cup or whether it's getting in the mid range. L. Ellis, let's talk about him. He's the one guy. He's the one guy that I said, he had 10 assists versus 1 turnover when you combine Red White and the Division II win over Texas Tyler. But it wasn't just the efficiency, and you expect some of that in those games, but it was the decision making, the reads, how calm he was with the ball and setting things up. He didn't look like a newcomer. But we've always known, and I've known this guy's an electric scorer. He was the leading scorer in junior college nationally. He was Louisville's leading scorer and assist guy, but a much different scenario in a struggling Louisville program, bottom of the ACC. One of the worst high majors was last year in college basketball, and then coming to Arkansas. And so against Purdue, I really started to see him have some problem areas as a lead guard. Picking his dribble up too high on the court. That happened 2 or 3 times, got himself in trouble. Went to spots where he had nowhere to go, and it disrupted flow, spacing, ball movement. Leaving his feet without necessarily a shot or a pass to make. So we saw that also some against Alcorn State. 3 turnovers against the Braves, 2 against Purdue. He still had some assists in there, but I think you want to see a more steady game from L. Ellis, because I feel like in those last 2 games, he's been more comfortable when he's gone back to scorer mentality. He certainly was that in stretches against Purdue that helped Arkansas. Don't get me wrong; he was key in Arkansas finding a way to get that game to overtime and then winning it. But at the same time, it was more about him as a scorer. Arkansas's got plenty of scores, and they certainly don't want L. Ellis not to score. But sometimes when you watch a guy, you could tell where their comfort levels are right now, and I think he's maybe reverting back to some of those shot first instincts because he's comfortable with that. He's done it forever. But he's transitioning. He understands at the next level, he's going to be on the ball a lot and have to be a good decision maker and a guy that gets teams into their stuff, sets guys up on time and on target, and has a feel for when to go get his and when to help the team as a facilitator. You want the ball in his hands to begin games because that's what Eric Musselman has started doing. But that's a work in progress. That's something that Musselman, he's shown in the past. If something's not working, he'll mix it up, change it up. And Arkansas's got more than one player. Tremont Mark, we saw him close against Purdue. Not as much of him on the ball against Alcorn State, but you didn't need that. I mean, you could have had all 13 guys bring the ball up at some point, and maybe they had most of them that did in that game. And so Musselman talked in post-game press conference. I don't know if he was sending a subtle message to L or others, but he talked more about Devo and maybe looking at Tremont again on the ball some. I think Caleb Battle's an end-of-game closer. When the games are going to matter because of his ability to get you offense, if a play devolves, this guy can put the cape on and go get a bucket. I think he'll make the next pass if that's a better shot. And it gets the defense on its heels. And if you foul him, he's going to make you pay at the foul line. So you've got, in your backcourt, to me, and Devo Davis, he hasn't shown much from a scoring standpoint, not against Purdue. This last game, 5 points, but 5 rebounds, 5 assists, multiple steals. And then what does he do? No turnovers. That's the Devo Davis we see that you never know what Devo's going to give you. I wrote this the other day. He's the joker in Musselman's deck. And I really believe that because he can get you in so many ways, and you don't know what exactly you're going to get from him. And yeah, there's some head scratching stuff sometimes, but you take it because this guy finds ways to make Arkansas one of the best teams, especially in postseason. But he helps you defensively. He's Arkansas's best on-ball defender. He's preseason All-SEC second-team consensus when you look at media and coaches for a reason. He was all-league defense last year. He's a guy that, whether he's scoring the ball like he did against Kansas, somewhere in between that and what he showed us against Alcorn State, but he's a guy that's capable of helping Arkansas because he can defend at least 3 positions, and in a small ball lineup, maybe 4, and he can certainly play 3 or 4 on offense. I missed the comments that were coming up that time. I wasn't ready. So we talked about L. We've talked about Caleb Battle. We've talked some about Devo. Tremont Mark, arguably to this point, is Arkansas's best player in the backcourt when you start adding it up. We saw what he did against Purdue, was the hero to get that game to overtime with that big pull-up 3, hit that big J, that mid-range J from the nail, and then made it his last 3 free throws to ice that game in overtime. And then this last game, Arkansas's second leading scorer, very efficient game, 6 of 8 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. Now, I didn't see that coming from Tramon Mark, and I don't know if he can maintain that efficiency or volume. But I mean, he rose up and hit the three that mattered, the only one he made against Purdue, and he didn't take. That may have been the only one he attempted, or maybe only one more than that. And that game didn't count, so it's not on his stats. But what I've seen so far in the last couple of outings, he's been very efficient shooting from three. It's now a matter of, what kind of carryover you get, because this guy's an excellent pull-up mid-range shooter. He knows where his spots are. He knows where it reminds me a little bit of Stanley Moody, who's having success, by the way, playing in the second unit for now on a two-way contract with the Detroit Pistons, but a little bit of similarity in understanding where his spots are. Amude, I always mispronounce his name, wasn't really a drive into his spot guy. He was a catch and shoot, mid-post, so there's differences there. But I like the fact that both guys know where their bread is buttered. They know where in those mid-range where their spots are and where they're confident shooting from. They're not out there searching, man. They're not probing. They get it and they know where to go. And so I really like that about Tramon Mark, and I love his, he'll get to the rim. He can finish with either hand. He's lanky. Defensively, I think this guy can be elite. He'll block shots from the wing. He'll get steals. He's constantly in the fray. He's mixing it up. He and Devo have that similar quality. The freshman Leighton Blocker, to some degree, has that, although he fouled out 5 fouls in 10 minutes in the regular season debut. But he's already shown us some neat stuff, some good stuff, because he's fearless. But you got to have guys like that. We haven't even talked about Trevor Brazile. Just recently picked up that 50-player watch list. It was named to it for the Naismith Trophy, National Player of the Year. I probably mentioned that the last time we were on, because it happened on Monday before the Arkansas played Alcorn State. But here's a guy to me that has already looked. He's answered so many questions that we thought we were going to be asking for a while, because he was out for so long. He makes a quick return, blows everybody away at Pro Day, had a nice exhibition season, a nice game against Purdue. In this last outing, 13 points, 6 rebounds, 4. He's perfect at the free throw line this year. 4-4. Of course, he was 5 of 5 against Purdue. Doesn't count. But I haven't seen him miss at the free throw line, and then he's knocking down threes. So, first game he only hit 1, but another efficient game for him shooting the ball. He did get ejected with about 11 minutes, between 10 and 11 minutes, for coming onto the court after a flagrant one was being sorted out. That didn't break into any kind of a melee. But he came a little too far out onto the court. Even though that was contained, he still got ejected from the game after they reviewed it. Not a big deal. It doesn't cost him any time in the next game. That's just one of those things you can learn from in a 34-point win. I think the areas where Arkansas corrected itself on the glass, plus 18 after getting destroyed against Purdue. On the offensive glass, Arkansas doubled up Alcorn State, who I mentioned the previous season was a good offensive rebounding team, one of the top teams in the country. Doubled them up, 14-7. Arkansas and Alcorn State each had 8 second chance points, but you were competitive there after getting blown out in all those boxes in those areas against a superior Purdue team. But still, you paid attention to detail. Maybe one thing to still be concerned about, I'm sure Musman is 15 turnovers in back-to-back games. Arkansas was +1 against Alcorn State, 16-15 there. That's not a large enough margin, probably for Musman's liking. They did clobber the Braves and points off turnovers, 22-10, so more than double it up. But Arkansas also had 15 turnovers while forcing 20 against Purdue. So 15 in back-to-back games. I think they'd like to do better. But also remember, Arkansas played all 13 scholarship players, both walk-ons, and it wasn't like he waited till the end of the game to get everybody in. All 13 scholarship players played in both halves. So expect some continuity disruption there, especially for a guy that likes to keep it tight, tight 5, 6, 7, 8, just depends. You're going to have some of that when you play that many. But I think Arkansas will pay attention to that tonight. I think Arkansas is going to want to try to take care of the basketball better than it's shown so far. Musselman talked about this in the offseason too, that this team they were still dealing with some turnover stuff from what they could see in practice. We know last year's team struggled with that in fouling. But, there wasn't much that Arkansas didn't do well against Alcorn State. I think the other thing was Musselman wasn't pleased with the Razorbacks' defense around the rim and contesting shots around the rim. Arkansas did an outstanding job contesting nearly everything against Purdue. I felt like against Alcorn State, for the most part, Arkansas did it. But there were some times around the basket where guys were a little flat-footed, ball watching, maybe waiting for someone else to make a play. And Musselman sees that stuff, man. They talk about it. The ball movement, Arkansas had 28 made field goals, shot 52% from the field against Alcorn State. But the ball movement, 20 assists on those 28 made field goals. I mentioned they were 10 of 30 from three, 12 of 30 from three, which is outstanding, 40% for a program that's been bad shooting from distance the previous 2 years, ranking in the 300s in NCAA Division I. But you look at those assist numbers, 238 passes in the half court. Musselman, they target 200. They've had plenty of games where they don't meet that, and they have other games where they do. But 238, they kind of blew it out. And you looked at, you could see a veteran quality in that backcourt. Devo Davis, guys making the extra pass, making the first good pass off penetration, kick out. And then if a guy had a shot, he might pass it for a better shot for a teammate. So you want to see that. That's how you get 20 assists and 238 passes on your half court, is by playing the right way, get the defense out of position, moving the ball via pass. It's always better. And then drive off of that. And a lot of guys want to dribble drive first, and I think it's always better to let your offense work and make the defense work. I think Arkansas checked those boxes. Again, the rebounding, the only thing you could probably argue is the turnover discrepancy wasn't enough. Arkansas's got those self-inflicted wounds. And then maybe some of the defending around the basket. Again, Musselman wasn't pleased with all of that. It may have something to do with certain guys didn't get a lot of minutes on that front line. Chandler Lawson's been outstanding, and then he started against Alcorn State and didn't play a lot. Same with Mekhi Mitchell, 4 minutes. We talked about L. Ellis and some areas he can improve. Certainly, when I look at Jalen Graham, who I did mention briefly, 8 points, 8 rebounds. Outside of Brazil, he was the one frontline guy that brought it. And he's been a guy that you can get offense from him. He had a nifty and one for his first bucket. He missed the free throw. He's not a good free throw shooter, 0 for 2. That's going to impact him being on the court at the end of games, certainly. But I thought, the 8 points in 14 minutes, but 8 rebounds in 14 minutes. He's not always been a reliable guy on the glass or defensively. So for his debut against somebody else, that's the kind of performance Eric Musselman wants, and it helps validate some of the talking points over the summer when Musselman bragged about how locked in this guy was, paying attention to detail, buying into expectations. And so we keep an eye on Jalen Graham because, to me, I think Musselman's probably mostly settled on a top 7 or 8 rotation, even if he won't express that. I think he still wants guys to compete. He can't right now, until it plays out on the court. He doesn't have to talk about it much, and he can pass the buck on that and say some guys may be playing their way out, and there may be some truth to that. I still think on that front line outside of Brazil, there's some question marks. I think Chandler Lawson's a guy that can really help Arkansas, whether he's starting or not. I think he's going to factor in at the back end of that rotation no matter what. I felt like Graham was that guy before he missed the exhibition season in Pro Day. And what he showed me on Monday says he's right there. He's right there. And then it becomes, to me, matchups and what's working, what's not, and what do you want to go small ball? How often do you want to stretch the floor with guys like Jeremiah Davenport and Joseph Pinion? Even so far, they haven't made a lot of shots since they were going back and forth in red, white, in the open practice. But guess what? They're both capable, and the offense changes when they're in the game, and it forces defenses to change. They've been, their plus minus has been pretty good. But either one of those guys can really help Arkansas. I still think Blocker could be a situational rotation guy when you start talking end of half and end of game, like against Purdue, when he came in to close out the game, close out a half, but then close out a tie game. You don't know if it's going to go to overtime if you don't get a stop on the final possession. But Blocker, a true freshman, was on the floor. Now you got to worry, is he going to foul? Because he had 5 fouls in 10 minutes the other night in the regular season opener. So you got a lot of quality. When you have this much quality on your roster, and you can talk about 10, 11, 12 guys, that doesn't mean that, I still think when it comes down to it, it's Brazil, Devo Davis, Tremont Mark, Caleb Battle, L. Ellis. Right now, those 5 guys, to me, are locks for your top 6, 7 rotation. L. Ellis is a guy, though, how much will they be able to trust him with the ball in his hands as a lead guard all the time? How will they mix him in or use him differently when they got guys like Devo Davis on the ball or Tremont Mark? We still don't know about that, but I think for now, he still factors in that rotation. I think Chandler Lawson and Jalen Graham are right in that group, because you've got to have depth on the front line. You're gonna, unless you play small ball a lot, which Arkansas will do some with Brazil as your tallest guy, you're gonna have one or both of those guys in the mix, and then Mekhi Mitchell's in that conversation as well. So you've got three right there. And then I think it then comes down to guys like Jeremiah Davenport. I think there are going to be times when he's knocking down shots and it's changing the dynamic and Arkansas needs it. He's going to see a lot of run. I think Joseph Pinion could be that guy. And again, guys like a Layden Blocker, I think he's going to play. There are going to be spots for him to play, regardless if he's getting heavy minutes every night. I think he's going to have plug and play opportunities. So this is why Eric Musselman's offseason recruiting mattered, because I think when you looked at what he did in the portal and what he was able to get back in Brazil and Devo Davis was huge. But I think putting it all together, he's going to have so many options to deal with injuries. They've struggled when the injury bugs hit. They just have. I think if a Brazil goes down again, that's going to be the hardest guy to replace, because he's the guy that brings so many different elements that make him a matchup nightmare for everybody. You just lose a lot of stuff on your front line if that happens. So I don't want to jinx anything. Knock on for Micah. He's healthy and he's playing like a guy that doesn't look rusty to me. He's not perfect, but man, he doesn't look rusty. He's been efficient and he's been good. And he looks bouncy out there and he looks confident. And the moment doesn't look like he's still figuring things out after being out for nearly a year. I think Musselman's got his group where he's got enough answers if you do deal with foul trouble during the game, or a temporary injury, or even an injury that may be sustained for a while. He's got enough depth and versatility in that lineup. He's got enough depth and quality in there that even if it's not an injury or foul trouble and a guy's having an off night or the matchup just isn't working like you thought it would, you can move things or shuffle it around a little bit, and there's other guys you can bring that bring something different to the table. I think he's got more answers than he ever has. And when I tell myself that and understand back-to-back Sweet 16s, a couple of Elite Eights, I understand these things and how they really get it steamrolling in mid-January on usually. I think this is a team that can start league play better. I think it's a team that may just very well compete for the first SEC championship under Musselman, although that's not his main focus. His main focus is getting ready for March. I agree with that philosophy. I'm just saying I think the pieces might be there. It's the same talking points, but I think each game as we go by, it's worth revisiting some of the stuff, because we've talked about some of the matchup stuff with Gardner-Webb. I didn't go through all of their players yet. I'm going to do that before we wrap up here in the next 8 or so minutes. But I do think Arkansas is equipped now to deal with just about anything, have its best start and maybe finish in SEC play. And then I think they've got the pieces. This is the second year in a row looking at the roster on paper, the talent, all of it, where I see potential for a final weekend to go that far, Final Four. Last year's team, too many injuries, and losing Brazil, for the rest of the year, that in itself altered for me. And I wrote about this. I said, I don't know, even with getting Nick back, that I see Final Four, but I see a team that can make a deep run. They did. They made a deep run. Sweet 16, that, when you get past the first weekend, you've made a run in the NCAA tournament. Now, can Arkansas do better than that? I think they can. Again, it's going to come out down to guys being available, staying healthy. I think they're better equipped to deal with it, but I don't think they can take a couple of blows like they had last year, especially if that involves Trevor Brazile. Now, tonight, let's look at this matchup a little more. I talked about what Gardner-Webb did a year ago. They played everybody in this 40-point win, just about everybody on their bench. Same Arkansas was able to do in its blowout win on Monday. So both teams come in 1-0. Gardner-Webb's got a returning guard, DJ Nicholas, all Big South Conference a season ago, and his numbers in probably limited minutes as a starter, they let everybody play, pretty much mirrored his averages from a season ago. How good is Gardner-Webb in their conference? They finished tied for fourth last year. I think they're predicted top half again this year, but it's a 9-team league. It's not a deep league, so third or fourth, or somewhere in the middle, a little bit better than the middle, I think is where they're projected, which is, they tied for fourth last year. So that was basically middle of the pack in that league. So, again, DJ Nicholas is the returning all league player. They've got like 6 veteran guys though that were part of their program last year that played in game 1. I don't know how many of those guys will play in tonight's game. but they had 6 guys that were back from last year. They've got about 4 newcomers, a couple of freshmen, a couple of transfers that played significant minutes. But again, when you have a blowout like that and everybody's playing, you just don't know which of those guys is Kraft going to trust tonight and run out there. But, it's a team that doesn't have a ton of size, a 6'10". They do have a 6'10" and a 6'9". So he's got a little bit there. Arkansas, to me, there's not a matchup until they go to the Bahamas that really, to me, favors any of these teams. They're not inside, not out. No personnel packages, no tangible part of the game, no intangible. I mean, these are games Arkansas should win and win handily. That doesn't mean you won't find yourself in a scrap and a fight on any given night in college basketball. But again, I keep saying it, broken record, Arkansas is equipped to deal with all of it. I think they're equipped to run. They're equipped to stretch the floor and space it with three-point shooting. They got a great drive, mid-range slash game. Looks like they're going to be good at the free throw line again. They've got the pieces to have another top 10, 20 defense. They moved up in KenPom, ranked preseason 14 after that win. They moved up to 12th. And then defensively, I think they were 11th. So that's where they've slotted. Your first Elite Eight team was 10th in KenPom's defensive efficiency ratings. The second Elite Eight team was 11th, so 10 and 11. And last year's Sweet 16 team, I think, was 16th or 17th. They were just a little worse, not much, but top 20 still. Arkansas's got that kind of personnel to be really good again on that end and be better than it's ever been, more diversity on that offensive end. And that's why I think all of that, plus that Eric Musselman factor, game planning, scouting, in-game adjustments, those three, I think the first two he's the best at. In-game adjustments, he's quality. And I think now, again, it's about guys staying healthy. The experience level, I see how serious about some of these guys seem to me to be about doing their job on the basketball court. And they're not in an exploratory mode. They know who they are. Now it's just coming together, and you're starting to see some of that. I mean, you saw it against Purdue. That was a team that was together last year and came back as the player of the year. And then we don't want to spend too much more time on that. We still have it in the rearview mirror. Still see it a little bit there. So it's worth talking about a little bit as we move forward. But yeah, I think Arkansas matches up with all these 4 first home games in a way that you should be talking blowouts in each one. We'll see what happens tonight. And then the other thing is, we'll look real quick because I want to get through this. I talked about KenPom number 12. The one thing I'm interested in, assuming Arkansas wins, let's say Arkansas wins tonight, I expect they will, and all the ranked teams ahead of them win. Let's just say that happens. So the only team ahead of Arkansas in the rankings that lost was game 1. That was Michigan State, the 4th ranked team in its season opener against James Madison at home. So what happens? I mean, does the Purdue game give Arkansas any bounce and any chance if everybody, if everybody holds pat and wins that should in the top 25, especially teams ranked ahead of Arkansas? Where does that leave? Does Arkansas have a chance in this first regular season poll that comes out to jump into the top 10? I think there's a possibility for that. I'm not predicting it, but I think it'll be interesting come Monday because the polls will be out, and then Arkansas's got a game Monday night against Old Dominion. But the AP poll will come out, and it'll be interesting to see if Arkansas holds serve tonight and the other ranked teams do. How much does Virginia fall, and does Arkansas move ahead of anybody? Just people still thinking about that Purdue game. Maybe not likely, but it's, I think, an outside shot of that. I think it's interesting to keep an eye on. So we'll look at that. Some of the other things going into recruiting just real quick, because there's not really a whole lot on that until we get to the spring again, because I think this is going to be another portal-heavy class in terms of what Arkansas does, because I feel like they're done and finished in the high school recruiting for class of 2024. But we know they've had commitments since September and then early October, and those players both signed on the first day of the week-long NCAA early signing period. It runs November 8th through the 15th, so it will conclude this coming Wednesday, but on Wednesday midweek, both players, Jalen Shelley signed earlier in the day in the morning in Branson, Missouri at Link Academy, where he's playing his senior season, signed his letter of intent. National top 50, 6'8" combo forward from Frisco, Texas. Took his visit to Arkansas in September. I think it was September 8th through the 10th, and then he committed a day after that. So after he got departed and got home for a night, slept on it, the next day committed. And then you had Isaiah Elohim, the 6'5" wing guard out at Sierra Canyon, California, another basketball power. Both Link and Sierra Canyon are two of the best. And when you talk about high school independent basketball always seem to factor into that Geico National Championship scenario. But Elohim got his done as well. Did his just after noon, almost 12:30 out there on the West Coast. Was 2:30 Central Time. National top 35 4-star. Here was a guy that originally, before he got hurt last year, was ranked. It was a 5-star. He was a top 5 guy. I think the last I saw before he fell a little bit after that injury was ranked fourth overall player. And both of these guys are going to help Arkansas. Outstanding signing class. Only 2 players. That's back-to-back years. Something could change on that, but something drastic has to change because I think that's it. But now those are done. Those letters of intent, no dragging it out. Both players got it done on day 1 of that week-long period. And now they focus on their senior season. Razorbacks focus on their season, but also if the next thing up is recruiting, that means, portal recruiting, that means you finished your season. So you don't have a lot of distractions in terms of what's pressing through your season. What you will have during the season are visitors from younger classes 20, 25, 26. We've seen a lot of kids coming up there to games recently to check it out. The Purdue game, Arkansas had 10 kids from in-state. Jalen Chili, who just signed, he told me the day of game he was going to make it. He's going to be there. So Arkansas had a nice group in there. We already put out a couple of names. There's a lot more coming. There are others coming. But I've already put out a couple of names coming to the Duke game on Wednesday, November 29th, a midweek game for that first ever ACC SEC Challenge at Bud Walton Arena. Terrion Burgess, class of 25, national top 35, 4-star at a Benton 6'9" combo forward, has already taken visits to Arkansas, attended multiple games, but he'll be there for Duke. As will Jacob Lanier, the 6'6" guard out of Maumelle. Very talented guy, national top 34-star. I think he's a guy that can end up being a 5-star. I think Burgess has the potential to get there too. He's been close, but both of those guys really highly regarded. Both will attend the Duke game. In fact, I tweeted out some highlights out earlier today. Maumelle just played Whitehall in a game that counts. Whitehall's loaded. There's a 2025 Jay-Sean Hayes at Whitehall, 6'5" guard that's got a hog offer. But Jacob Lanier in his season opener, 13 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals. I put out a highlight reel today with those stats. But Maumelle defeated Whitehall 88-64 in the season opener. So already some of these guys are getting on the court. You love to see it because basketball's here. Not only do I cover the Razorbacks and recruiting for the Hogs, but I also go and cover the players across the state and the region when it comes to high school, whether it's grassroots in the spring and summer or during the high school season. So I'm always excited for all of the basketball and look forward for more. We're 42 minutes, 50 seconds in. We're going to get to 45 minutes today. I'm just going to wrap with this. I want to talk just briefly about the Pro Hogs. You've got 11 NBA Pro Hogs this year. 2 of those are two-way players. Stanley Moody, who I mentioned earlier, had a career high the other night, 15 points in the NBA, 4 or 5 from 3. He did that matching up against Moses Moody and the Warriors. The Warriors won that game. Moody had a decent game as well that night, but you're having not only multiple nights where there's 6, 7, 8 guys that are Pro Hogs playing on the same night, but a lot of times these guys are playing and matching up against each other. Seen several games like that already this year. Bobby Portis having a Bobby Portis effect already for Milwaukee, doing what he does as one of the best 6 men in the game. Isaiah Joe is effectively the 6th man for the Oklahoma City Thunder, averaging right at 10 points a game and around 40% shooting from 3, doing what Isaiah Joe does. Jalen Williams battling a hamstring injury. He's played a couple of games now, back in the fold with Oklahoma City Thunder. Led the NBA in charges as a rookie last year, playing about half the games because he played a lot in the G League. So just another incredible talent when you look at his passing. Shooting 40%, near 40% from 3 in his career. They leave him wide open because they're worried about him passing and beating him with a pass. So they kind of leave him up and sag off so he can't beat him with a pass, and he's beating him with 3s. That's what you have to do to sustain a career and to add value to what you already do. But just going down the list, Daniel Gafford's already had a double-double this year. Had a game last week or a few days ago, 12 points. I think 7 or 8 rebounds, but he had 5 blocks in the first quarter. 3 of those against Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP of the NBA. Now, they were 3 blocks on Embiid on 1 possession. That basically the span of 11 or 15 seconds. 3 blocks on the reigning MVP, who went on to put Gafford in the basket a few times on his way to 48 points. But Moses Moody's been outstanding in the second unit, getting a lot of run. A nice 10-point game against the defending world champs. Game that went to the wire against the Nuggets a couple of nights ago. The Warriors lost, but Moody had a plus box in his minutes and finished with 10 points. But all these former Hogs that are playing right now, Nick Smith Jr. finally got on the court, 5 points on 2 of 2 from the field, 1 of 1 from 3 in 4 minutes, had a box plus 4, a rebound and a steal. But I'm saving the guy for last, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about Anthony Black, the number 6 overall pick in the draft, Orlando Magic. He's watched the first handful of games from the bench. The Magic have had some injuries in their backcourt. Gary Harris was one. Markelle Fultz, who just returned last night for a game in Mexico City against Atlanta. But Black had to step in the starting lineup. He had to play rotation minutes in Utah on the road, had a big impact in that game, a close game that the Magic won. Then he had a box plus 32 starting against the Lakers. His first NBA start, he guarded a little bit of everybody. D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Davis scared him into a turnover. Did a good job in transition, walling off LeBron James. I mean, he helped Austin Reeves. He had to catch several of the Lakers' talented players on defense, and he did more than held his own. He had 11 points in that game. He's been shooting efficiently, including from 3. We know he fills a box score. And he's had a couple of starts last night, but coming back off the bench now that Fultz is back. Harris is still not back, but Anthony Black last night, 9 points, another efficient game for him. And he's going to give you rebounds, assists. Last night he had, I think, a block and a steal. But Anthony Black is already making the most of opportunities. That's what for any level of sport is. If you're not the man and you got to wait behind the man, when your turn comes, you got to make the most of it. Anthony Black has looked really good so far, and we're still early now. He may earn his, he may get more and more opportunities even when guys come back healthy because of the way he's played. So you love to see that. Jordan Wall still hasn't played. He's been reassigned to the Maine, to Boston Celtics G League team, which is in Maine. I think the G League opens with games this weekend starting tonight. So we'll see a lot of Jordan Wall stats in the G League. Same with Ricky Council, the 4th, the Philadelphia 76ers. He's yet to play in an NBA game this year. Of course, Patrick Beverly, the journeyman, I saved him. I said, I guess he'll be the last one we wrap with. But Beverly's now in a second unit kind of role with the Sixers, who are off to a great start. I think they've only got 1 loss so far. That was at Milwaukee. They just beat Boston. So a lot of NBA Hogs, a lot of pro Hogs, and a lot of these guys are factored in to rotation roles, and you love to see that. At some point, Arkansas is going to break back through with an all-star, an NBA all-star. Joe Johnson's a guy that we know did that. Patrick Beverly's been all league when you talk defense a couple of times. Of course, Sidney Moncrief, Alvin Robertson, they've got guys in the past that have done it, but I think Arkansas will get there again. So anyway, we're going to sign off now. We're at 48 minutes. Thank you for joining me live on HogvilleNET YouTube analysis, our pregame analysis. Number 14 Arkansas hosts Gardner-Webb tonight, 7 o'clock, SEC Network Plus live stream at Bud Walton Arena. Signing off live today from Jose's Bar and Grill in Tawnytown. Thanks for being with me, and we will have a post-game show tonight, probably 30 minutes or so after the game ends. See you then.